Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Learning with Faith. This is your host, Aysleth. I also go by social media as Sachi Ice Queen. We've been doing Learning with Faith for at least 2 years or so, um, probably three actually. And so we've had a lot of amazing guests. Today we have two special people. Both me and my husband decided to join Turning Point USA, and we're in the Little Rock area. Today we have two of us are in the Little Rock area, and then one of us is in Texas. And so I'm super excited for you guys to hear a little bit about them and what they do, and just hear the heart behind the mission, I like to say. And so without further ado, George, go ahead and reintroduce yourself. Tell us what you do with Turning Point and how you got involved. I know you messaged me, and that's when I was like, "Hey, let's meet. Let's do a virtual meetup." And so, the rest is history. So,
Right,
but
right.
yeah, go ahead and reintroduce yourself to our community and tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I'm George P. Brooks. I have an interesting story. Survived addiction, mental illness, all those things. And what drew me to Turning Point was that I've been a follower somewhat of Charlie Kirk's for years, and I found most of his values aligned with mine. I respected his debating style, his discourse, and when the tragedy happened last year, I was sort of galvanized, and I wanted to get involved with Turning Point. So. I contacted staff there in December, and it's been a process getting to this point. One thing that I love about it is our mission to register people to vote. Because right now, with the tenuous political climate, and this is regardless of whatever political affiliation you claim, we can't get involved in the process and affect change unless we at first get registered to vote. I believe it's a birthright of American citizens to have their right to vote. And I think that anything that we can do to facilitate that is so key and important. And I also believe in the values of family, of faith, of accountability. And that's why I truly do love this organization. Everything has been wonderful going so far. And I'm excited to talk about what things we have coming up. And I'm excited to work with you and everyone else.
Yeah, I thought it was really, really cool whenever you told me you're like, oh yeah, I do this for Turning Point, in Texas. And I was like, oh wow. Whenever you were messaging me, I honestly thought that you lived here in Little Rock. I was like, I guess this is another local, that saw my post and was wanting to, get connected with me. And then you told me it was just the random, algorithm of Facebook. So
Right, right.
I was like,
Sometimes it actually benefits us. So I'm
yeah.
glad it is in our case. Yeah.
To me, I was like, oh, this is a God thing. Just because I don't feel like, little things like that are like, a coincidence or anything like that. I really do feel like, whenever people have similar mindsets and they have, they have the same goal in mind, to make America better, just, like you said, get people registered to vote. I have done that in the past. And so, when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's, pretty cool that they do that. I didn't even know that Turning Point did that. I thought they would just
Right.
debate people, you know?
Right. Well, I'll be honest. One thing that I found is that there's a tremendous lack of knowledge as far as what Turning Point is, what we do, what our mission statement is. So I deal with this, and I do many podcasts, and anytime they find out I'm affiliated with Turning Point, almost immediately they have preconceived notions that are inaccurate. And one thing that I endeavor to do in my role as city president is to change that narrative where they really understand who we are, what we do, and what we stand for.
Oh yeah, I think it's really important, the communities, the different parts of Turning Point. I think it are really, really essential to what makes America run and what makes it better, like the heroes, the families, the young professionals, and then the part that me and Antionette, our guest, that's she's gonna be joining us shortly. We're part of the Rise part, I think it's having that, just thing in common, I think is really, really cool and really powerful. When it came to Turning Point, what was kind of like your inspiration to keep doing it or keep wanting to be part of it?
A lot of it was, my values. I'm 48, and they've been long and hard forged. And I wanted to make sure that in anything I do in God's purpose for me, I align myself with people that have like mind. My race was not my religion or anything like that. I align by ideology and value. And being basically at one point a fan of Charlie Kirk and his debate about style and everything, it was just natural. It felt as though it just flowed. I've already written several proposals for initiatives and things I want to do with Turning Point. I really can't talk about it, but I'm working on a lot of stuff behind the scenes. I'm looking at planning my first event as city president soon, acquiring my staff and all those things. And I plan to hit the ball rolling. It's a very exciting time. And I love the fact that we're growing rapidly as well.
Oh yeah, I think it was really interesting, whenever you were telling me about it, and then I had a long conversation with Antionette. I was like, oh wow, she would really. And one thing that I noticed is like both you and her, you guys sounded like you really cared about what we were, what we said and what we had to say. And I think that that's very rare to find nowadays. Most people, they live such a busy life that they don't really like take the time to actually like listen and actually care about what the other person is saying. And so whenever I felt that both with her and with you, so I was like, I think this is definitely something that I definitely wanted to be part of. My husband was like, oh yeah, for sure. Like my husband was like sold from day one. He didn't even have to know just because I mean, just like you, he had a very, he followed Charlie Kirk and he still watches his videos all the time,
Yeah.
and so I think he made such a powerful, impact and legacy that he left. And I think that it's really awesome that his wife gets to like carry that on, and so I think Erica has given that ability because I know, other types of wives they probably wouldn't have wanted to be in the public eye because of the way that, he left. And I think it's a good, to me, I saw her character through her, choosing to be in the spotlight, choosing to still stand up and speak up and not just stay quiet, and I think that was a good whenever I saw that I was like, oh, okay, well, not everyone would do that. So if you could give some kind of advice to someone who's like, I'm registered to vote, but I don't really vote, what would you say to them?
Exercise, you're right. I mean, especially right now in the age that we're targeting on HBCUs, which I'm so excited about, are right in that age where they're engaging and getting on the highway of the political process. And I think it's important that we get people to vote. One statistic I want to mention is that in the last presidential election, 88.5% of registered voters voted. But in looking at local and municipal elections, they oftentimes get to 20% or less. And people need to understand that's really where your impact is most felt on your local elections. But there seems to be some voter apathy. So I think if we can galvanize people to register to vote, maybe that'll help dissuade that some of that apathy where we get more people involved in the actual process that really affects us on a daily basis.
Oh yeah, of course. And I think a lot of people they're like, "Oh, my vote's not going to count because of the electoral college," and but I always tell him, and just like you said, it impacts you when you go to vote for the policies and the things that they're trying to pass in your city, in your
Right,
county. Like it definitely impacts you. Like, in Russellville, Arkansas, they were wanting to pass a casino. It didn't pass. Like that was
right.
something that, it's going to affect your city, it's going to affect your county. And so I think my sister, she studied political science in college. And so me and her, we would always just talk hours. And I don't go to a family function without politics being like talked about.
Right.
Partly because she was that like involved where even at baby showers she would have like voter registration forms in her car and ask everyone there, are you registered to vote at a baby shower out of all things.
Right.
So I just seeing her do that was kind of, to me, I was like, I think it's definitely changed my perspective because
Right.
one, she would talk about it all the time. And two, it was always interesting to me because like I'm first generation, my family was came in the 70s during the war. Um,
Cool.
And so, thank you, Bill Clinton, for the amnesty.
Right, right,
And so, my mom, she's registered to vote, but she's never actually voted. And so I told her, I was like, Mom, you're not using something that you can use that so many
right,
people want to use. Like, there's so many like, immigrants that they come here, they're affected as well, So some of them they wish that they can vote and they can't. And so I feel like
right,
there's so much, missed opportunity for the people who are not registered. Not to mention this is something that, people, died for you to,
right.
be able to do, And so
Well,
we just celebrated, 250 years of, freedom. So, what were your how did you spend the fourth and what did you enjoy yourself and how was your family or did you get to see your family or anything?
well, I will not lie to you, and I actually cited this in one of my essays on Facebook. This fourth hit different for me, because I actually took the time to sit and learn about Juneteenth and really see what it meant. And I know a lot of people might not get this, and I really don't care, but it made me have even a greater appreciation for the fourth. It really did. And I celebrated both pretty well. I just moved to a new area. My neighbors came and got me. We had a bonfire, barbecue. It was great. We had a couple beers, had a good time, and it was a good time. But on my heart the whole time, it was a different feeling about the fourth. And I think that going forward, and it's funny with it being the 250th. I think going forward, I have more reverence, and I celebrate Juneteenth and the fourth. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people want to pick and choose, but it's both for me. And one thing about going back to registering voters is that I managed two political campaigns over the past years. One for a friend who was running for school board, and one for a friend that was running for mayor of Dallas. And one of the main issues we often encounter is voter apathy. Really, when you look at those local voting numbers, they are typically pretty low, unless it's a contentious or high profile election. So I think, and like I said previously, I think that us going out and registering people to vote, and that's not our only initiative, but focusing on that, is going to lead to maybe some, better situations because we don't have a diversification of views. People aren't expressing themselves, or it's coming out wrong, and we have to go back to one of our basic rights to right the nation, and that's exercise your right to vote. Grievance is fine, but grievance without action is just whining.
Oh yeah. I think that's really powerful because like a lot of people, when you mentioned the, Juneteenth, I remember I was a model actually for a fashion show that they did, on Juneteenth weekend.
Hmm.
Uh, and so it was really cool. To me, it was really cool because like, my nephew, he's half African American. And so I took him and it was really cool for me because he usually spends most of his time with my family. So
Right,
he knows all about the Latino culture. He knows all about us, but he didn't know about his, other side of, his half of who he is. So I
right,
it was really cool for me to take him that so that he could like, kind of get to know his own culture. Um,
right,
and it was a fashion show, but they also had like music, of course, they got food, so like I thought it was a really cool experience for him. Um, just because he doesn't get that, his dad isn't in his life, and
right,
unfortunate, but I think it definitely was I saw the look in his eyes when he was like, oh, like it was and plus my sister, she studied anthropology as well.
right.
I know that he's heard about his culture, but just for him to experience it was something else. And
Yeah.
so, I think it's good that you definitely honor both sides, even if
Right,
they get upset.
right.
I think people are going to get upset regardless. Like,
Yeah. I mean, they would. I mean, especially with us being involved in Turning Point, I can tell you this honestly, we're going to catch a lot of flack. I already have. Okay.
yeah.
Just because of people's preconceived notions. And you have to get to the point where you can't worry about that. You have to follow your purpose. And I think it's beautiful that you made sure that he was in an environment where he learned about his culture, and encourage him to keep doing that. They only make his life richer. And I think that we need to do that more in our own culture, as well as get immersed in different cultures as well, so we can get a better understanding of who we are.
Oh yeah, I think it's definitely like, when my sister did her ancestry.com, and there was always rumors of, our family having Jewish lineage, and then, whenever she confirmed it, it was definitely a aha moment for us. It kind of made a lot of sense for me because I was like, oh, I can relate to them a lot, but I don't know why. Well, I found out why. You know,
Yeah.
and so I think it definitely, once you kind of learn who you are, it definitely is a life changer for sure. Uh,
Right.
my son's, even though he's 100% Latino, I definitely involve him in a lot of different, cultures, just so that he knows that, there's other cultures around. I think
Right.
when you're so like, closed-minded and you don't want, and your kids to see other cultures, you're definitely doing them a disservice
Definitely.
because like there's so much richness in like different cultures, especially like both yours and mine.
Yes.
Like we got music, we got food. Like there's just a lot of things that you could learn, that you wouldn't be able to learn in other cultures, and vice versa.
Right,
So I
right,
think
right.
I do. I mean, I am expecting, some
Yeah.
some haters,
Congratulations.
but I don't really pay them much attention. They're just low key fans.
Yeah, and
That's
here's the
how I
thing.
see it.
When somebody tells me they have haters, I tell them congratulations. And the reason being that if you have haters, that means you're doing something right.
Oh
And
yeah.
the haters are always watching.
They are. They are.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I'm me and my husband we spend most of our time on TikTok, and oh geez, we get our lives like restricted all the time, and we had like this one time, like yesterday, I was live, and within like 2 minutes of me going live, I hadn't even spoke anything. We were just listening to music, and TikTok is different from Facebook where you can put music on and they're not gonna like flag your video or whatever, And so,
Right.
but somebody like reported us and we didn't even say anything. We were just
Right.
listening to music. And so I was just like, I was like, yeah, thank you to the haters because you're still on my content. You're still looking at my stuff. And so it reminds me of Cardi B whenever she said thank you to the haters because they're still buying her music. It made me think.
Yeah. They're still talking about her, So, but and sometimes you have to know when to cut off too. Sometimes you have to know when to disengage. That's. I've been a mental health advocate for 8 years. I've started a nonprofit mental association 8 years ago, and we focused on Black male mental health recidivism and fatherhood. So anytime I see an opportunity to sneak in a mental health tip, I'm going to do it. And in dealing with these haters, you have to know when to disengage, how far to go, and set your boundaries on that because the more you grow, the more they will show. I can tell you that. So just be ready for it.
Oh yeah, they're definitely, I'm glad that you mentioned your nonprofit, 'cause like you told me that one time, you were the first meta.
Right. Yeah. I was
So
around before them.
yeah, so I thought that was pretty interesting, but I think mental health is so important, especially in today's world where, you can get cyberbullied, you can, get, so much hate online. And unfortunately people like, they take their life from situations that are like that. And so I think it's really sad that um in order to get attention, sometimes negative attention is still their way of getting attention. And it's very childish, I would say, I mean, I was a teacher for about 3 or 4 years, and technically I'm still a virtual teacher for my nonprofit. And so, but to me, it makes me upset sometimes. I vent to my husband, of course, and then I go on TikTok and I vent to my TikTok followers.
Right.
Well, I think you have to have an outlet. I think if you just keep it bottled up, you don't talk about it, you just, ignore it or you don't address it, I think it can get worse. I think it's
Right.
definitely important for you to talk to someone. Um, I always tell everyone I'm not a therapist, but I am a ordained minister. So, and
Right.
I'm a preacher's kid. So like,
Right.
I always tell people I'm not I didn't study enough psychology and sociology to write you a prescription, but I can
Right.
definitely probably like
What's
lighten the load a little bit,
Well, here's the thing. You don't have to be a biblical scholar to love God and be a Christian. So I think sometimes we get hung up in titles. Now, in my many years, lifetime, 8 years of running my nonprofit medical association, I've always been a staunch advocate of therapy. I've been in therapy 8 years. It's done wonders for me. I know some great therapists. If anybody needs one, just DM me. She's in the Austin area, but she does do televisits. So I'm a staunch advocate for therapy, for mental healing. In my case, faith is a very big part and has been a big part of my recovery. Now I understand that may not be for everyone else, but that's what it is for me, and that's what I stand behind.
Oh yeah, I think it's definitely, like you said, people get caught up in the titles. We don't, both me and my husband, we don't have a church. Uh,
Mhm.
we believe that, we are the church, and so I think we still attend church. Uh,
Right.
but like I always we've had some conversations even whenever he does his taxi rides because he owns his own taxi cab business.
Okay.
We've had people that came in the car and they literally told us that they were about to do something, to themselves.
Right.
And so like I think those kind of moments is kind of like gets you back to like, reality, kind of like shakes you a little bit, opens your eyes to the reality of how many people are hurting. And so
Right.
I love that Turning Point has, Turning Point USA Faith, where they get to, do worship, things and they include faith in their business. And I think that's really important. Um, when it comes to your faith, what kind of led you to be in something like Turning Point USA, which is very faith oriented?
Over the years, anyone that knows me, it's been quite a journey for me to get to this point in my faith. But it's been a journey, and at the point that I am now, it just aligns. So it just felt right. It kind of fell into place how it happened. But I mean, God works in those ways, so that's how I'm approaching it, and I hope to do some good. And some of the initiatives and things I have planned long term, because I do have term plans for my role here at Turning Point, is I want to address mental health. I think I've got three proposals now addressing mental health, addressing economics, addressing trades and things like that. So we've got a lot of sweat equity built up just because of the alignment of values. So I'm excited to see what I can do and what we all can do collectively.
Yeah, for sure. And my last question before we turn it over to Miss Antoinette, if life was a lesson, what would you say it's been teaching you using one word or phrase?
Resilience, resilience, because I don't want to get to go down the rabbit hole of my narrative, but I've survived a lot. And one thing that I learned through my faith and through faith in myself and my own growth is be resilient. As long as you draw a breath, you can make another step no matter how bad your situation is. So I would say that's the one thing that life has really taught me. And when you asked me that question, that's the first thing that came to mind, resilience.
It's a good word. I
Right.
think if you don't have that resilience, you don't go anywhere. Like
Right.
you just stay stagnant. I think when you have resilience, you have that like little extra, to keep doing more, to keep going for more. And so it's a good word. Welcome, Antoinette. I was so excited to do this episode, mainly because, I haven't really told anybody yet. I've told a few people, but I wanted to definitely, do this episode just to kind of like say, that I'm part of, Turning Point USA with you. And so I'm very excited. We got to have George on here from Texas. And so he's the one who introduced me to you or Yadusha. And so I'm very, oh, that's TikTok, y'all. We're on TikTok as well. So if you hear some wait, oh, it's my husband, of course. I told him I was gonna be doing a podcast episode, so thank you, baby. But Antoinette, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for Turning Point and what kind of led you to Turning Point and how did you get involved?
Okay, well, hi everyone. I'm Antionette Racy.
All
I am the chapter president for Turning Point USA Communities Little Rock. I am a Little Rock native, born and raised here. Have also served the community here in Little Rock pretty much my entire professional career. I actually got my start in serving the community, actually with the Democratic National Party or the Democratic Party of Arkansas, on the Obama '08 campaign. And at the time, I wasn't even old enough to actually vote in that election. I was still only 17, but we had some connections in my family. So I was able to still, work the polls and be really, really politically active that year. And from there, I went on to interning at local, actually, the North Little Rock Housing Authority was my first internship. And then I started volunteering with the state, which led me to just stay in community service, even as I got my college degree. I kept working. And so pretty much I figured out through my life's journey and just seeing how things played out in my neighborhood in the city of Little Rock. So many things that I had been told just didn't make sense. I think something so unique about my personal journey is I got to see what I like to call both sides of the fence. So I was actually born and raised in the East End projects of Little Rock, Arkansas. But the projects were torn down when I was about 10. We moved out into a better neighborhood. And I always had family members that, did really awesome things for themselves and in the community. So I was able to just tag along. And so just seeing the difference in people that had made opportunities for their children or whatever in my own family versus the experience of my immediate family versus the things that the black community is told that's true. Just a lot of things just didn't add up.
Oh yeah.
And it,
I'm
yeah.
sure.
And it got to a point to where I had what I would call a Blexit because Rise is the I guess the child of TPUSA Blexit. Blexit stands for Black Exit, which means Black exit from the basically victimhood mentality. And for me, it was a complete exit from the Democratic Party as well. So I'm seeing all these things not lining up and not making sense. And then I figure out very soon or eventually that number one, the media is to blame for it. Number two, the Democratic Party has a huge, huge part to play in every lie that I had been fed and that my community around me had been fed. And I started to see things that just didn't make sense in serving the Little Rock community. I hope not to ruffle any feathers, with what I'm about to say, but I saw so many people become rich when they're supposed to be serving the community off of grant funds in very high paying government positions, government offices. But then the communities that I was serving was still struggling and still failing. And even though we had so many ground roots warriors, boots on the ground like myself, like really trying to bring, help and resources to the people every day, we didn't really see that much forward motion until recently, to be perfectly honest, until the Sanders administration that we're in now, until her era of Arkansas government. That's when we really started to see progress in the city of Little Rock. Also, Mayor Frank Scott, and they're both conservative to the bone. Mayor Frank Scott, even though he's a Democrat, he's conservative leaning. Obviously, Governor Sanders is MAGA. And so I just started to realize, you know what? I don't have to just vote Democrat because my community expects me to. I don't have to keep quiet about these issues that are killing the youth, that are killing women and children and men around me every single day. I don't have to be quiet. I can speak up. And so eventually that led me to Charlie Kirk's platform. And then that led me to making the decision to actually do a charter agreement with Turning Point USA to bring the RISE program and the communities program to the city of Little Rock.
That's awesome. Definitely wanted to give my husband a chance to, say hello to both of y'all. Baby, go ahead and unmute, and here's Reverend John Stutts, y'all.
Yes, it's great to be for us as a partnership to be working with Antionette, George, and all of Turning Point USA. For those who don't know, Antionette actually called me on the phone the other day. We sat down and we talked for a good minute. I'm a talker, so I'll talk your ear off. But we came to the decision. She offered me a great position, which I am honored to take part with. I am now going to be heading over the heroes side of this chartership, where I'll be doing community outreach for veterans, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, people in the medical field, trying to hit those goals that we need to be hitting. And when I say goals, I'm starting to set goals and expectations to reach more individuals of that caliber. This is something that is definitely not talked about enough. That I don't believe enough funding is going towards by our government. There's a lot of struggles that are involved just with this conversation. You know, just like we've done benefits and uh, planned events with people who are part of the Wounded Warrior Project. 22 a day. My goal is to take 22 a day and bring it down to 0 a day. That is that is something that I'm really going to help us focus on, is reaching these young men and women out here of all different diversities, backgrounds, people who have struggled with these things. There's not enough self-awareness of what's going on in our communities about our men and women who fight for our country overseas and fight for our country at home. It's happening in our backyard everywhere. There are young men and women
Yeah.
dying in the line of duty, all because of, the word I'm going to use is about the best word I can use. It's just blind ignorance. People
Right.
don't care about one another anymore. People don't respect each other anymore. And I'm here to make that difference. I'm going to bring love, community, companionship, and respect back to our communities and build that foundation and ground for our next generation of young men and women. Me personally, have being a firefighter before, growing up in a family of firefighters and being a fourth generation myself, I understand those struggles, those problems. Um, a big problem with people in that line of area is alcohol and substance abuse. A lot of times the madness drives people like us to do very harsh actions. Um, it's definitely something I also want us to focus on, because right now there is a huge substance abuse just in the Little Rock area alone. Just in the last 5 years alone, I've seen the rise of fentanyl climbing. I've seen the rise of DUIs and drunk driver accidents. Um, Something I want to do, which has not been confirmed. I'm waiting to hear back from some of my friends at Arkansas State Police. One of their biggest programs that they've done is the Click It or Ticket program, trying to make more self-awareness for people who are drinking and driving. Uh, that kind of goes hand in hand with our men and women that are serving our country. You know, they cling to using these substances as a means of coping. I want to be that voice and be there to help with this community outreach and show them that their voice and their body matters. So we plan on a lot of events with Miss Antionette. George, I hope to finally meet you and Miss Antionette here soon. I can't
Yes.
wait to see this amazing work that we're going to accomplish, and I know that we will accomplish. It's not when; it's a matter of we will. So we need to, let's get our teams rolling. Let's get our people racked up in line, and let's make a difference.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I don't think George had met my husband yet. Uh,
No.
Yeah, and, I think he failed to mention one word that he's gonna bring, and that's laughter. If anybody knows my husband, everyone knows he can make someone laugh. Even like the meanest person, like he can make you laugh. You can get a laugh out of him. I know that, because he does stand up around here in Little Rock, and so I think having even just like a comedy show that is, geared towards, what we're doing, I think it would be a good experience for people just to laugh. I think, laughter therapy is so like to me, it's healed a lot of things in with both me and my son. This is my second marriage, and so I think the laughter that he brought to both of us was definitely something that changed both of us. And so I definitely hopefully we'll do a comedy show. I think it would be interesting. It would be a very interesting show, that's for sure.
Well, like for me, I take these things very seriously and very close to heart. Yes, I love to make people laugh, and I love people to smile. That's the one thing that everyone around the world can come to agreement on, and that is laughter. You build love and community through laughter. You
Right.
don't see people trying to stab one another or trying to off each other or trying to cause a drive-by because of laughter.
Yeah.
That's the one thing where we can all agree that it's something good to bring in the community, and you get the younger generation more involved because they're so enticed by something that's funny. That's what their generation is built on. Their generation is
Mhm.
built on social media and public humiliation. Like that's their thing.
Right.
Like,
Oh yeah.
but when it comes to what we are going to be doing with Turning Point USA, is I'm a bulldog. I'm going to put that out there. I attack everything very brunt and very aggressively. I don't back off. I don't take no for an answer.
It's very
I
true.
I want people to have that self awareness, even if you don't do anything with it. It's just the fact that you heard it and that you've decided that you wanted to be part of what we're doing.
Right.
And so, you know, I I hope that we're blessed enough to reach all these people in our local areas and then continue on spreading from there. You have to start from within to make a difference.
That's right.
Right.
That's
Yeah, I
right.
think he's very true. And he is a very persistent person. I would know that for sure. Whenever we were dating, yeah, and even before we started dating, I was like, man, this person calls me a lot. Like, and so he has that mentality with everything. He has that job as a mechanic there in McClarty because he would call, and if they didn't answer his phone call, he went in person. He's like, "Hey, do you have a job for me?" Like, like he's a
Right.
very persistent type of person, and so I think it's gonna be interesting to see what we do with Turning Point and all these events that we have coming up. And I did want to mention tomorrow is Saturday, so we're having that dollar day at the zoo here in Little Rock. So if you're gonna be there, you'll probably see us from 10 a.m. to 2, correct? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm so
Yes.
excited. I love the zoo.
Well, just to kind of bounce off with what my wife was saying, the persistence thing is something that we all have to do. We all have to remain vigilant and persistent.
Right.
Otherwise, nobody listens. You're
Right.
not going to listen to someone that only tells you something one time. No, you got to be bam right in someone's
Yeah.
face with some of these things to sometimes get your point across, because we're not telemarketers, we're not salesmen, we're not people trying to get you to buy into something. We're people that are trying to change your life and change the lives around you, trying to change them for the better and for the good. So, I mean,
Oh, he's at work, y'all. So,
Okay.
but yeah,
no, it's just
And
that
so I
hang on one second. Um, no, my biggest thing is, with what we do outside of Turning Point, which we're both ordained reverends, we're international bilingual reverends, might I add. You
Right.
know, the way I look at it, persistence comes with Christ. Christ was persistent whenever he came amongst the lands and came to all the disciples and came to show who he was. When he came to Paul, who was once Saul, he was blind, okay? And he said, if you remain faithful to me, I'll show you what you need to see. And guess what happened? He healed his sight and he was no longer blind. When he visited him in jail, and said to go amongst and share my love and share my word among the lands. You'll see the persistence of my love. So, I mean, it goes hand in hand. I take on everything with God's token, so to speak. I'm doing as he's directing me to do. And
Yeah,
that's where I believe that the community really gets built. We're in the Bible Belt of all places.
yeah.
There's a lot of Christian love and community in these parts.
That,
Those people right there are
And
some of the
you
best individuals you can be around.
yeah, go ahead and
And
comment.
so I just, wanted to chime in and say, one thing that I've noticed, or that I will point out is we're fixing essentially a broken culture, and the adversary is at work 24/7 infecting the people with this broken culture. And so the followers of Jesus Christ, we're going to have to work just as hard and be just as persistent as him to try and win back souls and try and wash that broken culture or pull people out of that broken culture to
Oh
make
yeah.
a difference.
1000%.
Right.
Because he does tell us in the Bible to know me is to me, to love me is to be of me. And that's where that community really comes in. We have to love everyone, despite if they agree with what we're doing or not. I'm still gonna say, I'm gonna pray for you. I'm still gonna love you. I'm still gonna be there for you, regardless. And then, when people are seeing that, a lot of times they want some of that love. They want some of that happiness, some of that joyfulness, because they don't understand what's going on in this culture. Because, like you said, it is essentially a broken culture. People have lost their way. They've lost their way with themselves. They've lost their way with Jesus. They've lost their way with their communities around them. And that's why there's so much broken division.
I
That's
think
why so many
also
people are hateful towards one another and killing each other.
I think also people are listening to culture and they're not listening to God. I think the culture that we ourselves have created, I think in the United States, there's so many people that they suffer from so many, mental illnesses like depression and anxiety and all that. When I'm not saying not to take your medication, but I'm saying you should go to your creator. He can solve that for you. He can solve those things that you might not think that he can do. Ask him, challenge him. What does God say in the Bible all the time? The most common phrase in the Bible says, do not fear. It says, do not
Right.
fear. And it's funny that he mentioned, Paul, and, becoming, he was Saul. What did Saul do in the Bible? He would kill Christians. Like,
Right.
well, he did, and he did like a 180, And so I think if someone like, Paul can, do a 180, like you were talking about, being a Democrat and then going to being a Republican. I'm a registered independent, and I used to be part of the Young Democrats in high school. Interestingly enough, and I married a Republican though, so I'm like, so I just thought it was interesting that you
I,
were
I
saying.
showed I showed her that the orange man was right. Okay.
Uh,
But yeah, I'm
well,
sorry.
I don't think he's right about everything, but I think he's trying his best to do the right thing. So I think
Well,
it's
Right.
we'll look at it like this. Trump is bringing back God to this country.
yeah,
Right.
He
I can
is,
see that. I can
yes.
see that, and I do.
He has even said, I intend to make this nation under God once more.
Right.
His exact words.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I want to say one thing in regards to spirituality, Christianity, your faith. and dealing with mental health. I was diagnosed with bipolar by age 7 or 8 years old, so it's been a lifelong struggle. My son was also diagnosed at age 7, and I've had full custody of him, so it's been interesting. What worked for me in my recovery that I embarked upon 8 years ago was integrating the medicinal part, the therapeutic part, and my faith. Because for a long time, what I was doing, I was just dealing with the medicine. I was just dealing with the biological part of it. I didn't integrate that faith. And once I did do that, that's when my healing and growth really happened. So I'm always going to be an advocate for seeking out your clergy, seeking out your faith, seeking out your spiritual leaders. But at the same time, you do have to integrate that medicinal part in a responsible, healthy way. And I think if you find balance in it, that increases your chances for recovery. It
Oh,
takes both.
100%. You know,
Right.
I suffered from anxiety and depression when I was in college because
Right.
my son got diagnosed with autism and I didn't even know what that was, honestly. In the
Right.
Latino world, we didn't know what that was. And so I kept blaming myself, you know, and so I suffered from, you know, depression and anxiety whenever I was doing that. And you know, even my son now, like he takes his meds, you know, and we go to church. You know, I totally 100% agree with you where you have to combine them because you get the most, you get the best outcome when you do have that, when you know, you have your therapy sessions, you
Yeah.
have your, you know, you go to church and you have to get filled up. And so I think just relying on medication, I don't feel like it's enough. Like I
No,
think
it's not.
you
It's
have
not.
to
I,
have, God
I
made us,
can
you know, God made us social beings for a reason.
That's right.
I can attest to it because, you know, from a very young age, I was diagnosed with autism around the age of 4 or 5 years old. And I had to be on medication up until the time I was 18 years old. When I had the ability to choose my own path and choose my own freedom away from that, it became something very amazing because I grew control back over my life. And now I'm not saying that, you know, medication is bad. I mean, for some people do need it,
Right.
you know, and there's no shame in that whatsoever. It's just for me personally, my medication was dragging me down. It was the
Right.
complete
Right.
opposite with me. It hindered me from being where I am today. You know, talking to me without even knowing, you wouldn't even know that I have autism. You wouldn't know that I have ADHD. You wouldn't know that I have ADD. You wouldn't know that I have depression. You wouldn't know that I have anxiety, you know. And so, you know, my goal is definitely to try to really hit those bars with these communities because there are so many people who are just struggling just with that part of their life because they don't know where to
Yeah.
go.
Right.
Hmm.
Right.
And it's hurting so many of our youth. I cannot begin to tell you just on TikTok alone, I see something daily of our youth committing suicide, substance
Right.
Mhm.
abuse, alcohol abuse, and it's sickening.
Yeah.
And you know, the substance abuse actually aggravates any mental health disorder that a person may have,
Right.
any spiritual disconnection that you have. Also, it aggravates that too, because when you're using those substances, you're actually connecting to another spirit.
Right.
100%. And then also the substance is changing the physiology of your brain chemistry. And so I used to work in youth services for a bit, actually as a USDA program director. And so one thing that we saw every single day was children, the ones that were the most emotionally dysregulated, were the ones that we would catch with weed, or the ones whose parents would come in to pick them up smelling like weed and all the other drugs. And so all those things do play a huge role in each other. They
Yeah,
Right.
go hand in hand.
I think it also affects people differently. You know, there have been some studies that THC does help people with autism, but if
Right.
you don't have that, then like it's gonna affect your mind in a different way. It's gonna affect you differently. You're not gonna, you know, you're gonna be thinking of things that probably are not what you should be. You know, you're gonna be easy influenced. You know, it any kind of, you know, it's like a, I like to say like it's like a pond of water. When you throw a rock in there, those vibrations, you know, they go on and they go on and on and on. Like think about what you're listening to, think about what you're watching, what you're exposing your body to. Your body is 70% water, whether it's the music that you listen to, the people that you have around you. I think, they say you are the five people you surround yourself with. So I think not only, does substance abuse play a factor, but I think also who you allow yourself to be around is very impactful, especially at an early age.
Correct.
Oh,
Yes.
and
Absolutely.
and it also has a play. I'm going to bounce off with what my wife was saying. There are studies that show that THC by itself has been to a degree helpful in a regulated dose, and it's only been effective with people of certain types of disorders. But even then, medical professionals are still not saying, hey, give your kid weed brownies or something. Like, I mean,
Right.
this is just an uncharted kind of field, and it's something that's still being studied. So, just because so and so Jimmy Joe tells you, oh, well, you should get your kid on this, it'll help them. That's just like the same thing as saying, hey, bro, let's go over to a 100-foot cliff drop, jump off with me, nothing's going to happen, we're going to be okay.
Right. And I, for
Like,
one, I for one, have used THC therapy under the guidance of my physician, and I advocate for responsible use, for legal use, depending upon the situation. So, like I said, and the beauty of what we do, and this is something I'm glad that came to mind. A lot of times we operate in echo chambers, and one thing I love about Turning Point is not an echo chamber, and that even internally we can have divergent views and yet discuss them respectfully and responsibly. So I want to give everybody a salute for that because even though there's a little bit of divergence, I think in ideology on certain things, it's remaining respectful. So
Oh,
that means a lot. Yeah.
I think it just depends, like I'm friends with so many different types of people that are different faiths
Right.
other than mine. Like I'm friends with people that don't believe in God, people who believe in stones, people who believe in, if you look at the Bible, he had the 12 disciples, but he was in the crowd with all these other types of people. And so,
Right.
like I think it's interesting that I can be a friend of someone that practices a different religion than me. I think it's really, really cool that when you have that respect for not only yourself but for other people, you can have that communication. You don't have to stop communicating with someone just because you guys don't believe everything the same. So I think
Right.
it's a good way for, and this is one thing that I always hear, like a lot of, preachers say, you are the best testimony for someone that doesn't know Jesus
Right.
life in.
Right.
So like the way that you live, the way that you talk, the way that you set yourself apart from certain things, that's the only Bible that they're ever gonna see. It's
Right.
they're not gonna
And in my journey to, I'm a Christian. In my journey to where I got amongst my whole life, I've had periods where I went to a Buddhist monastery for 2 years, and all that did was allow me a time to think and discern about different things. And it solidified my faith in Christ, actually, having those experiences. And I'm grateful for those because they allowed me to be around different people and form different relationships. So I think that's important. Everybody's faith is different. If you notice, you may not hear me speak of Christianity by name. I'll say faith because I got to understand my faith is not necessarily your faith. But that in no way means that we cannot congregate. That doesn't mean we cannot work together. And that does not mean we can't have fruitful relationships. And unless your beliefs are so antithetical to mine and where they lack any morality or let alone be incendiary or dangerous. But other than that, I'm willing to sit, work across the aisle, work across the pulpit to help make things happen for my community.
Oh yeah, for sure. I definitely wanted to ask, Antoinette, we always ask all of our guests, and you heard when I asked George, if life was a lesson, what would you say it's been teaching you using one word or phrase so that we can close it out?
Um, Jesus is the way.
That's definitely I think it's a good way to end the episode.
All right.
I think there's so many religions that you can always search for. I'm a preacher's kid, I've been around faith all my life, and so, like George said, I have friends who are Catholics, and they're actually like close friends of mine too, and so like they're not, we don't believe the exact same thing, but we have that same underlining respect and love for one another. And I think that's what it comes down to. If your religion is telling you to hate someone, you got to find a different one. Like
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so counterproductive to the gospel. It doesn't profit the gospel at all for us to even be divided amongst one another. Those who call themselves Christians, like say, I'm a Baptist and you're a Catholic. For us to sit and argue with one another, nobody's profiting anything, and heaven isn't gaining anything. If okay, number one, the world around us is looking at us fighting and saying, I don't want to be anything like that. And then number two, while we're arguing with that person that we have religious disagreements or whatever, we're supposed to be trying to gain them to Christ. Are you really going to gain somebody to Christ by ganging up on them or pointing out all their wrongs or making them feel like God hates them or something? Being having a frosty attitude? No, like Jesus called us to be fishers of men. And oftentimes we act like repellent of men when we're too divisive and too honestly prideful about our own beliefs. Because at the end of the day, if we're really trying to communicate the gospel, we know that it's a seed that gets planted in somebody's heart, and that seed has to grow on its own. That personal relationship with Christ has to happen between the person and Christ. And all you can ever do is plant that seed.
yeah.
Right. That's right.
I think that's definitely a good way to end the episode. So if you guys are interested in being part of Turning Point here in Little Rock, definitely contact me or Antoinette if you're in Texas. What's the city that you serve at, George?
Cleveland, Texas.
Cleveland. So if you're in Cleveland, Texas,
Right.
reach
Right.
out to him. If you're in Little Rock, reach out to either me or my husband or Antoinette. Thank you so much to both of you guys for coming on and sharing a little bit about your guys' self and being with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And everyone stay blessed.
Yep. Bye everyone.